educational institution, we start with a quiz. Do not shout out the answer. Let your classmates have a chance to just think of 2 or 3 seconds before you yell out the answer. Then I'll give you a chance, okay? What is the significance of the number 88? 88. Okay, shout out the answer. That's how many credits you need to graduate. That was good. That was easy. Again, don't shout out the answer. What's the significance of the numbers 12 to 15? Tough one. Tough one. All right, shout out the answer. Shout it out. 12 to 15, what? Per semester. Credits per semester, right? I think probably almost all of you are full-time students here. We may have a part-time student or two. For them, it's a little different, 8 to 11. But for most of you full-time students, each semester, you've got to take at least 12 and no more than 15. Now, what have you learned in law school about general rules?
There's always exceptions.
Yes, and there is an exception. There is an exception. One time only, you can overload to 16 credits. You've got to talk to Dean Brett Schneider. She's got to approve it, but most of the time she does. If you hit her in a good mood, you're in good shape. Okay? One time out of the 4 semesters you have left, you can go to 12. Okay? Now, of course, you can go to summer programs. We have wonderful summer programs. DC, Rome, beautiful Philadelphia in the summertime. We have those kinds of options as well. But during the regular semester, 12 to 15. Okay, what else do you have to do to graduate? Look at the screen. Professional responsibility. And earn at least a C. A research paper. A research paper requirement for the upper level writing requirement. That's your typical term paper. You do a lot of research, you do an outline, you do drafts, you do all that, right? You've got to do one of those. Different ways to satisfy them. I'll talk about that later. Right? You also have to do a serial paper requirement. A series of papers, 4, 5, 6 papers, shorter, building on themselves, maybe slightly different subjects, getting feedback on the first, do a little better on the second, get more feedback, even the third gets, boy, by the time you get to 4 or 5, you are really rolling. You have to get a C or better in those 2 writing requirement courses. All right? What else? Skills. Skills. And skills we're going to talk about in detail in a couple minutes. But you have to get at least 6 credits of skills, and you have to be, doing it in a satisfactory fashion. Many skills courses are on the SU scale, which means you've got to get an S or an S plus, but an S minus in order to satisfy that requirement. Okay. Prerequisites, requisites, you've got to deal with those kinds of things, right? What's a prerequisite? Shout it out, shout it out. What's a prerequisite? You had these in college, I'm sure you had them in college. What's a prerequisite?
You have to take that before you
Before, right? Before. What's a co-requisite? Now we're getting tough. How about over here? Come on, co-requisite. What's a co-requisite? Yeah, it could be before, that's okay, or at the same time, okay? Right? For example, how many of you are taking tax now, electing tax? Great, you have satisfied the prerequisite for all the rest of the tax courses. Now you can take corporate tax and partnership tax and so forth. You've satisfied the prerequisite. How many are doing the intro to IP? You have satisfied a prerequisite. Now you can take all the other IP courses, all right? Okay, let's have to do that, all right? Okay, there's another very, very important prerequisite, right? And this has to do with the student practice rule. There's a student practice rule in Pennsylvania. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania will let you go into court when you have been certified under this program, right? And there are prerequisites. You can't do it next fall. You have to wait until the spring or in your 3rd year. Right? You have to take evidence, and you have to get at least a C in evidence. And you have to do 1 semester of trial ad. You have to do that as well. Okay? Why is this important? Well, it's important because some of our courses require it. Right? You want to go to the DA's office for a clinical, or the public defender's office for a clinical, or a variety of others. you must be certified to practice in court, right? But it's not just about courses, it's also about summer experiences. Some of you may get an internship or some other opportunity, and they may say to you, and you're certified, aren't you? Because you can't have it if you're not, because we need the student to be able to go into court. And you say, yes, I planned ahead. I saw it coming. I knew that I had to plan ahead. So I was sure to be sure I got evidence in and one semester at least of trial ad so that I was ready to go. Okay? Co-requisites and prerequisites. Okay. We got lots of, I'm going to show you this. Where do you find things on the website? Okay? You've got to find the course schedule. Current students, right? Course schedule, up pops this screen. There's a big box, you press on that, and what do you get? You get this. This is kind of a shot of part of it, right? But look, there's a course on here. Securities regulation. Securities regulation. You may want to take securities regulation. What do you need to think about in terms of your planning ahead? Is there a prerequisite? Is there a prerequisite? Click on that and you will find an answer to that question, right? You will find an answer to that question if you click on that. Click on the course and you get to another screen, and that screen tells you a lot of important things, like, is there a prerequisite? Yep, corporations. You've got to take the corporations course before you can take the securities regulation course. Okay? There's other information up there. Credits, who's teaching it, when it's being taught. This is old. This is not what's going to be happening next semester, but that's where you find all this information. Okay? Now, let's talk about, I think I'm ready to do that. Yep, types of courses. Well, you know all about exam courses. You know all about that, right? And you're going to get more of them. You also know about writing classes. Why do you know about writing classes? Ah, good, LRW, right? And we're going to talk more about live writing courses. And we have live client experiential courses. And we have simulations. I'm going to talk more about some of the important simulations a little bit later. But first, Professor Kristen Murray is going to talk to us about writing courses, right? Oh, I'm going to talk the exam courses. Where do you find it, which it is? Where do you find which it is? W. What do you guess that's for? Yep. TX. Exam courses, right? And sometimes you'll find things there, other possibilities, other kinds of things. Lots of information on the course schedule, which will be up in 2-3 weeks. All right, so I'm going to talk about the mechanics a little bit later. Okay, now we're ready. Sorry, Kristen, now it's your turn.
It's okay. It was exciting for a second, and then I have to step back down. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about writing requirements. Right, there are 2 upper-level writing requirements, as you heard: the research paper requirement and the serial writing requirement. The most straightforward way to fulfill those requirements is by taking a class that's designated as one or the other. So they'll be designated as a writing class that fulfills one or the other of those requirements. The research paper requirement, you're writing one culminating paper. In a serial class, you're listening to the podcast Serial. No, that has nothing to do with the serial writing requirement. Right, you are writing multiple papers, and the serial writing classes will vary in sort of what those things are, okay? Typically, they are 12 to 18 students in a class. They're smaller even than LRW, okay? And they tend to be on a deep slice of a topic, right? So rather than sort of the big survey class, you're talking about something more specific. So I teach an education law seminar. It fulfills the serial writing requirement. You write a bunch of different papers, reaction papers, a memo, a brief, a white paper over the course of the semester. And we do a deep dive into some of the issues that you touch on in constitutional law or a labor law class and things like that. Okay, so they are very specific as opposed to some of the large lecture classes. And because they're smaller, they involve a lot of discussion with the professor, right? So they might be more similar to an advanced seminar that you took as an undergrad, even in relation to LRW, right? Because it's even smaller and you're going deep on one particular topic. Okay. Over the course of the semester, you'll be doing a lot of writing, of course, in both of those types of classes. Professors structure that in different ways. Okay, so if you're writing a research paper, you're probably turning in a topic statement, an outline, a draft, and working and getting feedback on all of those things. In a serial writing class, maybe you're writing 6 small papers that are similar to each other. Maybe it's something more like mine, where there's sort of a menu of different types of papers. you should find out what kind of writing you'll be doing if that's something that you want to make part of the decision about what seminars you take, okay? Those are writing seminars that are sort of pre-packaged and identified for you when you register. There are other ways to fulfill those requirements. So one is that you can fulfill them through a guided research, which is like an independent study negotiated with a particular professor, okay? And you can fulfill either the serial writing requirement or the research paper requirement that way, okay? The other way to fill only the research requirement is through some of the upper level activities that I'm sure you've heard about before. So writing a note as part of a member of a journal fulfills your research paper requirement. I believe completing the appellate advocacy course as part of moot court also satisfies the research paper requirement, okay? So there are other ways as you opportunities start to open up to you that you might find yourself satisfying these requirements as well. Any questions about the writing requirement? Or should we hold questions for later? Hold the questions for later. I'll be back if you have any.
Okay, Professor Colleen Shanahan, how about our experiential programs?
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we call our live client experiential courses. The first thing to remember about these courses is we have a ton of them here at Temple, which is amazing, and the details really matter. So I encourage you to find faculty, fellow students, ask a lot of questions about the different options and the ones that work for you. You're going to hear a little bit later about sort of sequencing of courses, but don't assume that the course that sort of has the label is necessarily the best fit for you. There's both the topic, the kind of work, the kind of supervisor, and the kind of clinic are all things to think about for experiential learning. So we basically have we have three big buckets of experiential learning here at Temple, even though we have 5 columns because we have lots of different labels. So the first one is what we call internal clinics. What an internal clinic is at Temple is it's taught by a full-time faculty member. I'm one of them. And the hallmarks of an internal clinic are you get to be the lawyer. Not help a lawyer, right? Not do a memo, do an assignment, but you are the lawyer with the client, fully responsible for that representation. And those of us who teach the clinics, our full-time job is to facilitate your learning and your transition to practice. So that means you get a ton of individualized feedback and experience. So that's what the 5 internal clinics are. We then have what we call external clinics for a whole bunch of regulatory reasons. We categorize those as external clinics and externship programs. They're basically the same. The idea is instead of doing the work sort of here at Temple and taking the client yourself, you go to an organization out in the community. So Defender Association, SEPTA are some of the examples here. And I want to tell you, this is actually an excerpt of the chart. This is there, as you can see, a whole bunch more options. We just couldn't fit them all on the slide. And I believe this is going to be accessible to you so you can sort of see the whole chart later. So the external programs are ones where you are doing work in that organization. Some of them are opportunities that are writing, some are going to court, some are doing client intake and interviewing, some are civil, some are criminal, some are transactional. We sort of hit all of these different areas. And they are ones where there is also a classroom component. So the internal clinics have the work and a classroom component, as do the external clinics and externship programs. The distinction is who teaches them. They're taught by folks who are practicing lawyers, adjuncts, who then, as sort of an extra thing, do supervise and teach these programs. Then the third category is what we call practicums. Practicums are much more individualized. There isn't sort of a class of people like there is at the Defenders Association who are all doing the same work, who get the classroom together every week. Instead, it's you in the work placement. They're typically often fewer credits. And there are both practicums that we've designed. They recur every semester, so ones like the IRS. And then there's also the opportunity to go set up a practicum yourself. If there's something in our experiential offerings that you want that isn't in there, there's a framework by which you can go set that up in an organization in the community and get practicum credit for it. Then what happens is you have a relationship with a faculty supervisor, and there's a sort of related class that meets 4 times a semester to just support you in that practicum work. So as you look at this chart, sort of left to right is kind of most intensive educational setup to least intensive sort of educational components. It's not an either or. This is all a puzzle, and you'll hear a little bit more about how to put that puzzle together. And I think next we're going to hear from Professor Bartow about the simulation and skills courses, which are another puzzle piece.
Okay, Professor Shanahan talked about live client clinics. You're out there in the real world, a real client, got a real problem. Sometimes the client's an organization, sometimes the client's an individual, right? We also have simulation courses. Courses where it's not the real world, but it simulates the real world. Not a real live client, but somebody playing the role of a client. Why do we do that? We do that because it's a great way to start building those important skills that you're going to need as a lawyer. And because it's a building block concept, right? We say, you know what, if you want to do it, folks, full-time students, you do it next year, not your 3rd year. We won't let you do it in your 3rd year. If you want to do an integrated program, you've got to do it next year. Some of you may say, I don't want to do one. Fine. If that's the best choice for you, that's the best choice for you. Some of you will say, yeah, I do want to do one. Then you've got to think about, well, which one do I want to do, right? Both of them are the whole year long, 2 semesters. Once you're in, once that drop ad ends on that Friday in August, you're there till April. Whether you like it or not, you can't say in December, it wasn't really what I wanted. You're in it for the whole semester. 5 credits each semester. What does it mean to be integrated? It means that we take substantive areas and we integrate them with skills. Now, I think most of you have a pretty good sense of this, right? We have ITAP, the Integrated Trial Program. You take evidence in the fall and the first semester of Trial Ad. In the spring, you take Civil Procedure 2, and the second semester of Trial Ad. It's integrated so that the things you're talking about in the evidence class will be showing up in the skills class, small class, with a practicing attorney or a judge leading you in an exercise, right? So obviously, if it's Trial Ad, what are you focusing on? Trial skills. Making that opening statement, right? And getting up on your feet and doing it, and then having yourself critiqued, right? To help you build your skills, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And of course, that final, closing argument where you tie it all together and just convince the jury that they have to decide for your client. And then you're going to get a chance to actually do it in a mock trial. All the pieces are going to come together, right? So you're learning substance, you're working on skills. And in ITAP, you're working on the skills that litigators need to be effective, okay? There's another integrated program. It focuses on transactional skills. It focuses on the outside of the courtroom stuff, right? The kind of things that transactional lawyers do, right? Well, interviewing clients, counseling clients, right? Drafting documents, negotiating deals, right? In ITP, the Integrated Transactional Program, same deal, 2 semesters. We really do integrate a little bit more in that one because we have not just 1 substantive course each semester, we have 2 substantive courses and we kind of blend them together each semester. Trust and estates and professional responsibility are the 2 courses. So you get to do estate planning. In fact, you're going to do the whole set of documents that a client needs. And a client with a lot of needs, believe me. You're going to get to see them all, right? Wills and powers of attorney and so forth and so forth and so forth, right? The second semester, we sort of turn more to a kind of a corporate area, right? Students in ITP actually have to do the paperwork necessary to start a corporation, to create a corporation. They have to do all the paperwork and research necessary to apply to the IRS, right? So dealing with an administrative agency, have to learn how to do that, right? That's a skill for transactional work, right? You do that, you have to do all the filing of all the necessary papers and so forth, that drafting requirement. You have to defend it before an IRS agent. And then the finale is the sale of the family business. You'll be following a family, they have a small business, they decide to sell. Half of you will represent the seller, half of you will represent the buyer. A series of different negotiations to make that happen. right? Those are our integrated programs. There are other simulated courses in the curriculum. They're not just the integrated programs, right? There are a variety of other kinds of things, right? Professor Lipson teaches one on commercial transactions and so forth and so forth. There's lots of different opportunities for you to deal with simulated courses. Okay. All right. We also have certificate programs. Certificate programs require you to meet certain requirements, right, specified in the certificate program. And if you do, not only do you graduate with a JD degree, you also graduate with a certificate either in business law or in trial ed. Now, I remembered half of what Dean Brett Schneider told me. She said if you're interested in business law, talk to her. And if you're interested in trial advocacy and litigation, you talk, Sarah Jacobson, it just came to me. Professor Sarah Jacobson, that's the person you talk to if you're interested, okay? There's information on the website, you can get the details there, but talk to these folks if you have any interest whatsoever. Okay, now that's sort of, I'm going to come back at the very end and I'm going to talk about sort of the mechanics for a bit, right? But now we're going to really focus in on sort of what's out there, but sort of how do I navigate it? How do I make the decisions? How do I think this through? I've got a plan for the next 2 years. How do I go about that process? And all of you know Associate Dean Jaya Ramji-Gagalis, and she's going to talk about that.
All right, so that's a lot of information. Who's ready for the pop quiz? A lot of information. The good news is you don't have to take a pop quiz. The most important thing to remember, I'm going to say it now, I'm going to say it again, that this is a very individualized process, and you should get advice on how best to approach course registration for you. That is not going to be the same answer for everyone. It's probably not going to be the same answer for 2 of you in this room. So make sure you are thinking about this in a way that works for you. Everyone has given you a lot of information, so you have a sense of what's on offer. I want to talk a little bit about process, specifically about your thought process. How should you go about thinking about course selection? And as a good lawyer, the first question you should ask yourself is about goals. What are your goals? And the first goals you want to think about are your big picture goals, your goals for your final 2 years of law school. Because you will have 1 year of law school basically behind you when you're registering for courses, and you'll have 2 years left. Does that terrify anyone, that thought? So I want to be clear that you don't have to know at the end of your first year exactly what type of law you want to practice when you graduate. Indeed, most of you won't, and some of you who think you do will change your minds before you graduate. What I want you to do is cultivate self-awareness through a reflective process. Think about what it is you want to get out of the next 2 years of law school. As I like to say, we're not easing down the lazy river in an inner tube. You are in a kayak and you're paddling in a certain direction. You may figure out that's not the direction you want to take, but at least you have a direction, right? And then you can alter course. So I want you guys to all go into this process really thinking about what your goals are and what you're going to get out of the next 2 years of law school. I really don't want you to come to me last semester of your 3rd year and say, oh, you know, I should have taken that class, I should have done this, I should have done that, because at that point it's too late. So really think about this now. So think about what substantive knowledge and skills you want to have under your belt when you graduate. For some of you who think you want to practice in a particular area of law, that may mean courses relevant to that area of law. There are probably a lot of you who don't necessarily know what you want to practice. So you want to think about, well, are there 3 or 4 areas I'm interested in? Can I take courses in each of those areas and figure out which is it that I'm most interested in? Think about which of the classes you enjoyed the most in your first year and talk to the professor who taught that course and figure out what it is you liked about it. That may help give you direction, right? So think about, that's another way to think about it. Also think about what skills you want to take away from law school. So it may be, again, that you know that you want to be a litigator. And so you have certain skills that you want to learn. You need to develop oral advocacy skills. You need to develop brief writing skills. You may know you want to be a transactional lawyer. Litigation might give you hives, right? Fair enough. I'm a litigator. I can understand that. You might want to work on your negotiation skills and drafting contracts. You may also just think that there are certain things you realize your first year that you want to work on. You may want to work on your writing skills. You may want to work on your oral advocacy skills. So think about what it is that you as an individual want to work on over the next 2 years of law school. There are a lot of options. You have to think through this carefully and prioritize carefully. So that's your first step. Think through it carefully. Talk this all through with an advisor. Get some advice. And then think about working backwards from your graduation date, thinking about the full 2 years you have ahead of you and how to use them most effectively. You're not going to plan out every step of the way perfectly, but I want you to at least have some coherent, overarching vision of where you're headed. And then for next fall, think about your concrete goals for that semester, right? Get yourself some detailed, concrete goals. Say after first year you've decided you want to improve your research skills, you want to improve your writing skills, you want to improve your oral advocacy skills. How are you going to do that next fall? What class are you going to take? What classes are you going to take that are going to improve those skills? It may be that you want to understand what it means to practice law in a foreign country, you want to understand what it means to practice family law, to practice tax law. Okay, so how are you going to go about getting that experience, gaining that information through the set of courses that these professors have all talked to you about. So that's how I want you to think about your goals. And your goals should also include sequencing and balancing. As you think through the next 2 years, as you think through this coming fall, once you have an idea where you want to go, you got to be organized about getting there. So think about, as Professor Bartow spoke about, which courses you should take first, right? So there are some foundational courses like evidence, like Introduction to Intellectual Property, that'll be prerequisites for other courses. Think about building substantive knowledge, and this is some of the information that you'll get out of the faculty brown bags and information you can get from faculty you meet with individually, right? What are the best courses I should take in a given area of law? For example, I advise people interested in immigration law to take administrative law. Many of you probably have no idea what that even means, right? So it's important to build out the substantive areas. You also want to think about how you sequence the skills courses you're going to take, and again, this is going to be very individualized. So Professor Shanahan explained the difference between some of the live client clinical courses. So it may be that you want to start with an internal clinic because that's the best way to get really good feedback, and then you're going to be more comfortable going out into the world and doing a practicum. It may be for you, you want to go the other way around, but you want to think about what makes the most sense from your perspective. And then you want to think about what substantive classes you want to have under your belt. Do you want to do the environmental law clinic before you've taken environmental law, or do you want to take the environmental law course first? So think about how you're balancing the skills, the experiential courses with the classroom courses. So you also want to think about bar courses. You certainly do not ever want to take all your bar courses at once, but you want to have a reasonable number of bar courses under your belt by the time you graduate so that when you get to the bar prep course, you have some idea what the person is talking about in front of you, right? So there's a chart of bar courses there. For Pennsylvania, Civil Procedure 2, Corporations, Criminal Procedure, you can look this all up online, Employment Discrimination, Evidence, which you'll all probably take anyway, Family Law, Professional Responsibility, which you have to take anyway, Tax, Trust and Estates, right? These are a bunch of the bar courses. So you want to think about taking those courses, and this gets me to balancing. This is not a hard and fast rule. Again, it's going to be tailored to you and tailored to each semester, but you probably want to take a couple of exam courses each semester, so it may be that you take 2 bar courses each semester for the rest of law school, right? You may take exam courses that are bar courses, but that's one way to think about it. You probably want to take 1 writing course, 1 skills course each semester as well to balance out your time. So I teach evidence in the fall, and the most common pitfall I see is students loading up on lots of exam courses and finding at the end of the semester that they have not balanced their time wisely. So you want to think about courses your writing courses, your skills courses are going to be more intense during the semester, but then they free you up come exam time because all your work will be done by then. So you want to think about how to balance those courses, and you also want to think about taking what Dean Brettschneider calls a perspective or a passion course, just something that you're really excited about. That is often my advice to students when they ask me what class they should take. Take a class from a professor who you really enjoy taking a class from, or take a class because this topic is really, really interesting to you, because you're going to be super engaged in that class, and you're going to get much, much more out of that class. So think about taking at least one of those each semester to remind yourself why you're here, and just so you have a class that you're really enjoying. So balancing in terms of taking different types of courses. Don't overload yourself. And by the same token, don't overload yourself with all skills courses, because you will literally die if you do skills courses. You're going to be spending so many hours over the course of the semester. You also want to think carefully about extracurriculars, right? This is the other common pitfall that I see students making first semester, their second year, right? You want to show some leadership on your resume, but you do not want to overload yourself with extracurriculars. And it's exciting your second year. There's stuff that you're excited about getting engaged in. Just don't take on too much of it. And again, that's something that you can have an individualized conversation with one of us about. All right, so that is your assignment. Goals, sequencing, and balancing. There is a lot of support and information to get there. So we have set up some brown bag lunches. I think there are some more on the way. Organized by subject area. So if there are particular subject areas you're interested in, you can go to those brown bags, and Dean Brettschneider is going to circulate this all to you in an email, so you don't have to cram it all in now. But I suggest that you go to those to understand what the course offerings are, to get to know the professors. I think those are going to be really helpful. Set your fall semester goals, right? As I've said, like that's the next step. And ask for advice. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. Just a reminder that I always tell students, teaching evaluations are online. All of our teaching evaluations are available online. So if you're wondering about whether you should take a course from a certain professor, all the information is there for you. You can also talk to upperclassmen and other folks who've had that professor, but the information is there for your perusal. Take a look at the course schedule, as we've said, and so make sure that you're seeking advice. So again, that's the message that I will end with, and that's the message when I spoke to the dean about this. He said the most important message to get across in this session is that you should be asking for advice. You shouldn't be doing this on your own, because that's how you're going to set yourself up for a struggle in your fall semester. So all of these wonderful folks have offered to speak to you individually. So we will send around this information, but there are plenty of professors, plenty of administrators who are happy to talk to you about course selection and about planning out your next couple of years. And so your assignment is essentially the skills that you're going to be using as a lawyer. Set your goals, research effectively, and exercise your judgment well. And in order to do that, you need to get advice from these folks, and we're all here to help you. I will hand it over to Rod for some specific, to Professor Bartow for some specifics, and then we'd be happy to take questions from you guys.
Okay, you're hearing a message, Plan, plan, plan. Think about the next 2 years, not just the fall semester. You're only going to be registering for the fall semester come April. But you need to think about the other things. Remember where we started, graduation requirements. You know, I got to do what? What does I have to do? How many credits was it for the skills? Which skills courses might I do, and so forth? And how am I going to progress through the next 2 years and make all these things happen? Okay? Registration will take place in April. So you got a lot of time, right? You got time to think about it. Go to the brown bags, talk to others. Remember those ACE counselors? They're good folks to talk to as well, right? They'll be happy to talk to you about these things as well. So go out there and get that advice. Keep saying the same thing over and over again. Why are we saying it over and over again? Because it's so important. We want that message to get through. Okay? I'm going to be preparing for you a video or probably a voiceover PowerPoint presentation on the mechanics, right? The mechanics are the mechanics. They're important, but they're the mechanics. And so rather than bring you back here and have you sit here and listen to me drone on about that, right? We're going to have something available on your own time. Look at it once, look at it twice, look at some of it, stop, look at some of it later, whatever works for you to get to the mechanics. I just want to touch on one important feature of this, right? There are 2 steps in the registration process. Remember, you're only registering for the fall, although you will be seeing also the tentative schedule for the spring, so you get a sense of what's coming, right? First of all, you're going to get to pick one course. The first round, you're going to get to pick one course, right? How do you go about thinking about which course to pick? Well, logic might say to you, the one I want the most, the one I care about the most. And that may be actually the right course to be going after in the first place, but it may not be. Why not? Because if the course you want the very most is a course that will never fill, then it isn't very strategic to be using your first choice on something you're going to get for sure. How do I know which ones? Talk to people. Go talk to people. There are people that have a pretty good idea about how that ball's going to work out. All right? So what kinds of things are likely to be the kinds that are going to be tough to get? Anything with a cap. Anything with a cap. Anything with a cap. And the integrated programs have caps. Right? Seminars, for sure, have caps, as Professor Murray said, maybe 18, maybe 12, and maybe in something we call a hybrid, where there's only 6 writing slots. What's a hybrid course? Some students are sitting in that room, and they will take an exam. And they're taking the exam course. And at the very same time, my goodness, somehow we use the same room and the same professor and the same assignments, and we have a writing course. Those students will be working on writing, maybe it's serial, maybe it's a research, right? They will not be taking the exam. Everybody will be sitting in the same classroom at the same time. They will be reading the same assignments and engaged in the same discussion, but with different objectives. Exam versus writing courses. Okay. So picking your first course, talk to folks, get a sense of what might be good strategies for you. Okay? And then when you have it all planned out and you get yourself really planned, there will be a magic time on a certain day at noon. Clear the desk, right? Get your mind free, right? Get your finger going, right? Be ready to go, and you're going to have a system where actually what you do is go onto a certain site and see what's available, see if you can get it. Not available, let me try something else, and so forth until I get it. One course the first round. The next week, then you'll have an opportunity to fill it. The only other thing I want to say to you is, bad news, you're not at the top of the totem pole at this point. Right? Folks going into their last year are going to get to make their first choice before you make your first choice, but you will get to make a first choice before they get to make anything other than a first choice. And then they'll fill in theirs and you'll fill in yours. Okay? All right, again, talk to us. All right, let's throw it open for questions. Some of you may have questions of any of us. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
How often does the courses available change? Like if we look at a schedule from like 2016 or 2017, what are the chances that like by our second year or third year that class is going to be gone?
Okay, this is another great example of you should talk to somebody because it's a little bit complicated. There are some things that do move around, there's no question. There's no question. There are some things that are really pretty steady and are pretty much the same place every semester, right? Right? And that's the kind of thing that you should talk to somebody that knows about the schedule, right? You should talk to me, you should talk to Dean Remgalis. You should talk to somebody who has that information that can help you out.
And if there's a course you're particularly excited about, so you can talk to that professor.
Yeah,
If there's a
yeah,
course that I
yeah.
offer only every
Right.
2 years, right? So talk to that professor and see how often they offer.
Right, exactly. Yes?
Because the clinic registration is this Friday, is it possible to register for a clinic for the fall and then change your mind?
Yeah, so the internal clinic registration applications are due this Friday. And what's going to happen is the internal clinical faculty will read the applications and notify the students who are selected by next week. And when we notify you that you're selected, what we'll say to you is, external experiential registration is coming up. If there's something you might be interested in that would lead you not to take this internal clinic, tell us that and we'll work it out with you. If there isn't, then tell us that and we're going to lock you in for the internal clinic. So it'll be individualized, but you'll hear from the individual professor if you're accepted, and there's a way for us to work out.
Others? Yes.
In the simulated courses, for example, on
Yep.
ITP,
Yep.
you mentioned how they're adding skills that we're learning in, I think it was trust and estates. So is trust and estates included in that
Yes.
6 credit
Okay,
package?
good question. All right, so ITP, let's start with that one, right? You will, through the course of the year, you will end up having a trust and estates course, right? You'll have that. You'll have a professional responsibility course. You'll have that. Assuming you're going to get a C or better, and I know you all are, you check off one of the boxes of the graduation requirement. You will also have, over the course of the year, 4 skills credits. So you've checked off 4 of the 6 that you need, right? So on your transcript, it will appear as 4 courses, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring. Actually, the experience is very integrated.
So you don't have to sign up for trust and estates separately?
Absolutely not. In fact, you can't and shouldn't.
Okay.
Same deal for ITAP, right? Evidence, you had evidence, right? In the spring, civil procedure 2, you've had civil procedure 2. You get credit for that, as well as each semester, the trial ad piece. And I can't remember the credits, is it 5?
5. Can you
5.
talk about intro to trial ad and ITP so students
Yeah.
know they just have
Yeah,
to, don't just have to choose?
exactly. That's great. So let's say you're interested in ITP, and you say, yeah, but I kind of like to, kind of try my hand at trial ad. I mean, it would be kind of fun. There are folks that teach it really well here. You can, right? How do you do that? You take evidence, and it happens to be with Professor Dean Ramji Nagalis next fall. You take the, quote, standalone evidence class. Not the evidence that's integrated with the integrated program, but the standalone evidence. And then in the spring, you take Intro to Trial Ad. Intro to Trial Ad is basically the fall semester of the integrated program. You're basically doing the same thing that the folks in the integrated program are doing in the fall. So you get that aspect of it, and of course you satisfy the requirement for the student certification program if you do that, right? So that is also possible. ITAP students, right? You can find courses, right, that will do some of the things that we do in ITP if you decide to take the ITAP program, right? A course in interviewing, negotiating, and counseling, and there are other individual courses that will do particular pieces of things. Some courses that will focus on the drafting, and some courses that will focus on the other things. It's not quite as neat going that way as it is the other way, but it's definitely doable to get those kinds of skills in some other form. Questions? Yes?
When you register for an integrated program, is it one registration, or do you have to go register for each individual class in that program?
You're going to register for the program, right? And I'm going to have this on the video, the PowerPoint with the talking over, right? For ITP, it's very simple, and why? Because all the small sections meet exactly at the same time. So you only have to make one choice. Do I want ITP? If you go for ITAP, it's not so easy. The reason is because the small sections meet at different times. So there you have to, and again, this will all be explained to you, but there you have to have a listing of your preferences. But again, you only pick one thing. So if you pick a particular, get a seat in a particular section of Trial Ad 1 in the fall, that automatically puts you in a particular integrated evidence section with a particular professor. That also puts you into a particular civil procedure section with a particular professor in the spring, and a particular small section in the spring, which may meet at a different time. So ITAP, you've got to look at, really focusing in on the Trial Ad 1 sections and what they pair up with the entire year. But you're only going to actually make one choice.
If you know that you want to study abroad, possibly spring semester, is it possible to still do one of the integrated programs?
The answer is, unfortunately, no. Because they are full-year programs. They are full-year programs, and so if you're not going to be here, if you're going to be studying abroad in one of those programs, that's wonderful, wonderful experience, but you're not going to be able to take one of the integrated programs, right?
If you're taking one of the clinics that needs the trial ad certificate, do you have to take ITAP, or can you just take the courses separately?
You can just, so everyone should keep that in mind. In order to get certified, you can take evidence with me and intro to trial in the spring, and you'll be certified the same way you would be if you take it.
Is that your question? Yes.
So that ITP and ITAP are only available our second year?
Yes.
Are there other simulations that are available our third year, or are they all second year things?
The integrated programs that, that take a substantive course and, the 5 credits and they're all blending in, they're only in the integrated programs and they're only in the second year. Are there other courses that have simulations? Absolutely. I mean, to pick one, Professor Lipson teaches a course in commercial transactions, right? That's a course you could take in your third year for sure. And there are others that do that kind of skills building. There's a real estate transactions opportunity. There are other opportunities that you can get that kind of thing, right? I thought I saw in the back somebody. Yeah.
Do you know when the schedule for fall is going to be available?
Couple weeks.
Couple weeks, about at least 4 or 5 days before the 4L1 pick, which means it's even extra time for you to all of it. Yeah.
But again, kind of in response to the first question, if you go up and take a look at this year, there's a lot of similarities. You can get a real good feel, right? If you go up and look at this year's fall and spring, you get a good feel. Not perfect at all. Things do move around, but you can get a sense of what's likely to be there. Anything else? Anybody else? Any other questions?
All the way in the back.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see. Yeah.
What do you get skills credits if you're not doing the ITAP or
An internal clinic,
okay.
an external clinic, an externship, a practicum. right?
Intro to trial ad.
Intro to trial ad.
Any simulation course, yeah.
When you look at the course schedule, it will say what the assessment is, exam, writing, but it also says what it fulfills. So if we flip to it, it'll say, yep, it's small, but you can see where it says fulfills, and it'll say serial, research, skills,
In that row.
in that row. So that's where you can.
And it also tells you how many seats are in the class, and if there's a little infinity there, it means the class will never go.
Unless you all fill the room up. There's more of you than fill here. One other thing I want to say about ITP with this is that ITP students get a choice. At the end of the year, they can either satisfy the serial writing requirement, because there's a lot of writing. You're doing a lot of writing, you're doing memos to the file, you're doing a whole estate planning document, you're doing a submission to the IRS, and you're doing lots of writing, series of writing, or, not both, or you can get 4 credits. In that program, you get 4 credits of skills. ITAP is 5 credits of skills.
I think there's a question in the front row.
One of you said to try to get an advisor, and then you went on and showed a bunch of pictures of professors who are willing to help. Like, who should we? Is it just based on what they teach, or?
So totally up to you. And Dean Breschneider, this is not just like the only chance you ever get to look at this list. Dean Breschneider will send this information out. You'll see some of our faces at the brown bags, and you can take a look at people's websites to see if there's a specific subject area you're interested in. You can contact a specific person, but I'm happy to talk to any of you, and if you ask about something that's not in my area of expertise, I'll say, here are the professors you should talk to about that part of the curriculum. So really, wherever you feel comfortable, and frankly, I think any of your 1L professors would be happy to talk to you about this as well. So you should just go find someone you're comfortable talking to, and we're all really happy to hear from you.
That's absolutely, I want to underscore that. You can talk to any of your 1L teachers from last semester to this semester. Anybody's going to help you as well as the folks up here. Okay, so what's the takeaway? Plan ahead. What's the other takeaway? Don't do it on your own. Talk to folks. Talk to other students on the level. Thanks, folks.